Hi, welcome to another video on the K Martinix Makes channel. This is Kendrick. I want to start a multi-week series today and talk about something that I have been working on since before my kid was born, and he is now almost 4. If that gives you any idea of how slow things can be. And that project is this router table. And it is not finished. I'm hoping to go over what I've done so far and talk about what the next steps are, what I have left to do to finish it, what I've learned along the way, and sort of document that whole process. So let's get started. This router table comes from a Woodsmith magazine that I got years ago. I love paging through all the woodworking magazines and diving into the plans that they show. It seemed like a really straightforward project. It had a lot of new skills and techniques I would get to try out, and I didn't have a router table, so it was solving an immediate need. I'll be honest, I didn't even own a router when I started this project. Another benefit that came up as I started was the fact that it's shop furniture, which means that all the visual defects are easy to cover up and fewer people will notice them, which make for a great project for someone who's just getting started. The case is made of 3/4 inch plywood, and the doors have these European style hinges. There's a space here to collect dust and chips as it falls out and make it easy to clean. The router lift will sit in here, and there will be a top piece that is still left to finish. Next are these drawers that I got to build that can store bits or guides and anything else that's helpful when using a router. The legs are made from hard maple, and one of the main reasons this project took so long. My normal lumberyard did not have the width and thickness of hard maple at a reasonable price, but I was able to find another really great lumberyard here in Portland that had a lot of lumber options to fit my need. The legs also had to be cut with a bandsaw, which was a whole other learning experience I'll talk more about in a minute. You'll also notice a theme of rounded edges across the whole thing, which help it create a cohesive look. And then there's also the spot for the power cord for the router to go. Taking a closer look at the legs, I had made a pattern for cutting these legs out, but learning the bandsaw was sort of a journey in and of itself. I got the bandsaw from my local tool library, which is something you'll hear me reference a lot, and it worked great for the most part, but I did have some major struggles. The blade guides seemed like they were really out of whack, and I don't know if it was that or a skill issue, but making sure that the blade was straight and true and tensioned correctly took a lot of experimentation. It also didn't come with a fence, which meant that I had to do a lot of rough eyeballing on the pattern, and that left a lot to be desired in the final piece. I think there's a lot left for me to learn using a bandsaw, so hopefully we'll get to experience that together over the next year. Let's talk next steps. So this is the surface of the router table. It's made up of 2 pieces of 3/4 inch plywood, and it's hard to tell in this light, but I have the space marked for where the router lift will get placed. I'm using a O-School router lift, and it will sit in here, and then on top of this whole thing will be a piece of laminate sheeting. I got this from a local cabinet building company who had a leftover piece to fit my need, and it was much easier than building a whole sheet that you can buy at the big box store, which is 3 times the size and cost of what I needed. I've never dealt with applying laminate before, so this is going to be another chance for me to try something new, but it'll end up leaving a smooth, easy to clean, scratch resistant surface. I also had considered creating a metal plate to put on top so that I could use metal clamps or jigs, so that might be something I end up doing in the future. Another thing I wanted to mention is that I'm using these Kreg lift leveling plates. Typically when you put a router lift in, there's a lift edge around that you can set your lift on, and that is how your lift can raise and lower. This build calls for using these leveling plates that sit in the corner, and you adjust those. And then once that is set up, your lift just sets right on the levelers. And then the final major step to do is to get the fence built. The plans call for a 2-part fence made from hard maple, this back piece of fence here, and then there's a removable front fence plate you can swap out that allows you to create and attach different jigs or attachments. There will be a slot cut in the surface here that the bolts will ride in to allow the fence to adjust back and forth. And then the final piece will be cutting a hole in the fence to allow a dust collector hose to attach into. I'm not totally sure what my final dust collection setup will look like right now, so I'm going to verify the final hose size before I end up cutting a port in there. So let's look at some takeaways that I've gotten from working on this project. Number 1, buy your pieces close together and make sure that they can acclimatize all together. Wood changes a lot based on temperature and humidity, and trying to join boards that are bought at different times create a lot of unnecessary challenges. Number 2, work off of your wood and not your plans. If you cut a groove that's for a specific thickness of board and then you realize that your wood is not actually that thickness, you're going to start having compounding errors. Rather, cut your grooves and your joinery based on the pieces you've already cut, and that makes sure that they are fitting together correctly. So cut off the existing wood instead of just relying on diagrams. And finally, all mistakes are an opportunity to learn. I am someone who can get really discouraged from mistakes and feel like the only way forward is to throw it out and start all over. But instead, I've started to realize that there are a lot of mistakes you can correct or adjust or cover up or just celebrate. I think my last tip that I've learned from doing this is just to get started and get out there and get going. I had been dreaming and looking at various Woodsmith magazines and other magazines and looking at all these much more complicated pieces of furniture, knowing that I did not have the skills or the resources or the ability to dive into those, but I didn't know where to start. And like I already said, this project was a great project to start on because no one is going to see it but me, so it can end up looking however ugly or however great. I will feel accomplished once it's all done because it's something that will actually be useful. And I have learned a lot in doing it. I've learned a lot about joinery, about cabinetry, about drawer making, about adhering slides. I still have steps to do, such as putting laminate on, buying hardware, picking out hardware, using adjustable hardware. A lot of things can be learned even if the final product isn't what you want it to be.